The likes of The Sopranos, Breaking Bad, and The Sweet Sweet Life of Zack and Cody are all pitch-perfect examples of how long-form TV can better even the tightest 2-hour movie. However, it takes a phenomenal amount of effort to keep a multi-season TV series on track, because with so many different voices working in front of and behind the cameras, it's incredibly easy for things to veer off the rails. And while for many shows this results in a slow decline in quality, do I even need to mention The Simpsons? Some series are ultimately defined by a single moment which forever taints it thereafter. You might call these moments jumping the shark, in that each series was never the same again. I'm Ellie with Whatculture, here with 10 exact moments that killed TV shows. Number 10. Joey and Rachel's romance, Friends. It's fair to say that Friends' best years were long behind it by the time it started wrapping up, but in order to introduce some additional last-minute tension ahead of the inevitable reunion between Ross and Rachel, a Rachel-Joey romance was randomly introduced at the end of season 9. Thankfully, the awkward relationship only lasted for all of 4 episodes, and though Joey did admittedly mention to Ross that he was in love with Rachel in season 8, there's no excusing the guy hooking up with the woman his best pal just had a baby with. Look, that's not to say that Ross was totally justified in this situation, but there was no scenario where a Joey-Rachel love-in would be a sympathetic or satisfying happily ever after, and it just served as lazy wheel spinning until season 10 could circle back around to the ending we all knew was coming anyway. Number 9. The island has an actual cork in it. Lost. J.J. Abrams' Lost is one of the most divisive and talked about TV shows of the last 20 plus years. An initially transfixing mystery series which became increasingly convoluted, and while many fans are still heartbroken about its underwhelming final scene and general lack of closure on many dangling plot threads, the moment that truly broke Lost occurred earlier in the show's series finale. Midway through Lost's 6th and final season, Jacob explains to Desmond that the island is like a cork which holds the world's evil at bay. But as it turns out, this metaphor is ultimately literalized in the finale when it's revealed that the heart of the island is quite literally a gigantic stone cork, which Desmond then removes, only for Jack to restore it later in the episode in order to prevent a global catastrophe. This is the point at which Lost's vague mythology gave way to abject silliness. It literally put a cork in any chance of a proper dramatic payoff, and it became practically impossible to take the remainder of the series finale seriously at all. Number 8. Deb catches Dexter killing Dexter. The first 4 seasons of Dexter were magnificent television, and many fans still contend that the show should have concluded with its season 4 finale, which shockingly killed off Dex's wife Rita in a fittingly ridiculous fashion. Sadly though, the show limped along for another 4 seasons before finally stumbling to a clumsy and unsatisfying close. But the moment that truly painted the writers into a corner came a good while prior. In the season 6 finale, Dex's sister Deb not only realizes she's in love with her foster brother, but then catches him in the act of killing. I'm not sure which of those 2 things is worse, to be honest. It was certainly a ballsy move to have Deb finally discover the truth, yet the writers ultimately did nothing particularly interesting or plausible with it, given their clear aversion to having either Dex die or end up in handcuffs. Instead, it led to Deb's character being assassinated over the course of the next 2 seasons, joining Dex in some murder, briefly becoming a drug addict, and then dying of a stroke in the series finale. Number 7. Buffy's Resurrection, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Though Buffy the Vampire Slayer thankfully never slid into outright unwatchable territory, the show's entire sense of stakes, pun intended, was fatally undermined once Buffy received a poignant death in the show's season 5 finale, only to be quickly resurrected at the start of season 6. The show's 2 subsequent seasons were hardly terrible, and the Slayer's annoyance at being ripped out of heaven by her friends is genuinely tragic, but they were certainly its weakest, in large part due to the fact that the table was reset in such glib fashion following Buffy's demise. Her sacrifice and her journey across the prior 5 seasons felt undermined by invalidating death so casually, while the show moving from the CW to UPN for its final 2 seasons due to budgetary disagreements with Warner Brothers underlined just how perfunctory these extra batches of episodes were. The show should have just died with Buffy. Number 6. Frank Underwood's hasty death, House of Cards. Production on House of Cards' 6th season was thrown into disarray when sexual abuse allegations were leveled against star Kevin Spacey. The decision was ultimately made to kill off his protagonist, President Frank Underwood, and shift the show's perspective to follow his wife and now President Claire. Her actress, Robin Wright, had been a tenacious presence in the show's first 5 seasons anyway and proved quite capable of carrying season 6 without Spacey, but she was gravely let down by painfully sloppy writing throughout. For starters, rather than bury Frank and move on as quickly as possible, the entire 6th season lingers on Frank's demise, causing the spectre of Spacey's disgraced exit to linger for the entirety. The season overindulged in melodramatic twists and turns as well, something that House of Cards became increasingly infamous for, ahead of a deeply terrible series finale. In the final scene, Claire murders fan favourite character Doug Stamper after he reveals that he killed Frank to stop him destroying his own presidential legacy. Yeah. Right? It was a most depressing and undignified end for a show that, in its first few years, paved the way for Netflix's prestige originals lineup. Number 5. Jack Bauer's own family are terrorists, 24. Unlike House of Cards, 24 was always ridiculous, but it knew it. Even so, after 24's 5th season, arguably its best, season 6 well and truly jumped the shark with its intensely off-putting revelation that the bad guys were Jack Bauer's own brother Graham and father Philip. Dun 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 indeed. Making the season's threat so personal for Jack came across hilariously contrived and totally unearned, effectively mutating the show into a garish parody of its prior self-conscious absurdity. This laid the groundwork for a 7th season where Jack's dead pal Tony returned to life and switched allegiances half a dozen times, after which the series felt less like a thrilling espionage serial and more like a live-action cartoon. Even with the London set Live Another Day miniseries proving surprisingly decent, season 6 had largely sucked all the air out of the room. Number 4. The Mother Dies, How I Met Your Mother. How I Met Your Mother was an undeniably revolutionary sitcom, albeit one which eventually crumbled under the weight of its own convoluted long-form storytelling right at the final hurdle. You just hate to see it. The final episode of season 8 finally revealed the mother, aka Tracy, to audiences, seemingly setting up a 9th season which would place an affecting capper on how she and Ted became a couple. Except the season 9 finale derailed all that promise with the shock reveal that Tracy died of a terminal illness in 2024, and in 2030, the time where older Ted is relaying the entire story to his teenage children, his kids suggest he still has feelings for their aunt Robin and encourage him to ask her out. The "it was really Robin all along" reveal left a sour taste in the mouths of most fans, undoing seasons of character development and shifting the goalposts regarding the show's entire premise. Though a superior alternate ending was eventually released in which Tracy survives, Ted stays with her and Robin stays with Barney, the canon ending is what will stick in most fans' minds. Number 3. Clark proposes to Lois, Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman was a fantastic emblem of mid-90s superhero television, at least in its thrilling first 2 seasons. But that all came crashing down when the season 2 finale had Clark ask Lois to marry him. Lois memorably replied, "Who's asking, Clark or Superman?" kickstarting a 3rd season defined by both their drawn-out marriage subplot and also the tension-deflating fact that Lois now knows about Clark's superhero alter ego. Lois doesn't accept the proposal for 7 episodes, and the actual nuptials don't occur until a few episodes into the 4th season, with numerous convoluted subplots causing repeated delays. The most infamous B-plot sees Lois replaced with a clone who is forced to eat frogs for sustenance, while the real Lois is kidnapped by Lex Luthor. But even once Lois and Clark are married for real and all that clone shenanigans are behind them, the pain isn't over, as a howlingly silly subplot where Lois is accused of murder follows. Season 4 then ends the series on a deeply unsatisfying cliffhanger as a baby is left on the pair's doorstep. And that's all she wrote. All of the show's biggest problems started with the horrendous wedding subplot, which effectively tainted around half of the show's 4-season run. Number 2. Bran the Broken, Game of Thrones. So much could and has been said of what went wrong with Game of Thrones' 8th and final season, that it hardly bears repeating. But fans probably could have dealt with the slow pace, compartmentalized storytelling, visible water bottles, and mischaracterization of Daenerys if the show at least stuck the landing. But Thrones' series finale was a wildly divisive disappointment, and no single plot point proved more infuriating to fans than the decision to make Bran Stark the ultimate king of Westeros. Hilariously named Bran the Broken, no less. Given how many other better suited candidates there were for the job in plain sight, Bran's appointment felt more like a shock value twist than a justified, satisfying culmination of an 8-season journey to see who finally won the throne. Of course, theories have since emerged that Bran was a genius mastermind plotting his ascent to the throne from many seasons prior, but it really just feels like a desperate reach to try and justify a creative decision that's neither sensible nor satisfying. Number 1. The Carver Reveal, Nip Tuck. The second season of the gloriously trashy drama series Nip Tuck introduced the Carver, a masked rapist who disfigured his victims by slashing their faces. It's grim stuff, but it's good television. He came to blows with plastic surgeon protagonists Sean and Christian after they began fixing the Carver's victims' faces free of charge. Seasons 2 and 3 did a fantastic job milking the mystery of the Carver's identity for every drop, before blowing it spectacularly in the season 3 finale. In this episode, it's revealed that the masked maniac is Sean and Christian's rival surgeon, Dr. Quinton Costa, who had been working in league with his cop sister Kit McGraw all along. Now you can't tell me that doesn't sound exactly like a synopsis of one of Joey's episodes of Days of Our Lives, and just like those episodes, it was a deeply unsatisfying reveal that didn't feel remotely logical or earned. Predicated upon a number of silly plot twists and was discovered by fans months prior when they ran the Carver's masked voice through a processing program. Worse still, FX accidentally posted promotional images of Quinton as the Carver on their press site 24 hours before the season 3 finale, compounding the disappointment. Subsequent seasons became increasingly ridiculous as if to try and compensate for the Carver debacle, but the series never regained its popularity despite limping on for 3 more seasons.